Sometimes I just want to knit without thinking. No counting, no shaping, just the rhythm of the stitches. If you feel the same, this video is for you. I'm going to share 10 of my favorite mindless knitting projects that are perfect for TV nights, travel, or when your brain just needs a break. If we haven't met before, hi, my name is Annika and I'm coming to you from Germany. I am a natural yarn dyer as well as an avid knitter, and I basically love everything that is related to the fiber arts. Let's get started. Some weeks are just too much. You're struggling work or your day-to-day life in general, messages are piling up, and even the thought of counting rows or looking at a chart feels like too big an ask. That's where I found myself recently. There was a project that I was working on that I usually love. It is a beautiful lace pattern knitted in unspun yarn, but at that exact moment it was just too much for me to deal with. So I gave myself permission to put it down, and instead I cast on something super simple. No pressure, just knitting, just yarn and stitches. And to be honest, this was exactly what I needed at that moment. When I say mindless, I don't mean boring, I mean relaxing, soothing and meditative. It's the kind of project you can pick up when your brain is full, when you need to unwind but still want the comfort of creating something and keeping your hands occupied. These are the projects that don't ask much of us. Simple stitches, easy repeats, no counting, no shaping. The kind of knitting you can do with your eyes half closed or while watching a movie or chatting with a friend. Right now, my go-to mindless knitting project is a pair of socks. This pattern is called the Letterpress Socks and it is a design by Helen Stewart. The sock itself is super simple. You have this textured cuff that has simple knits and purls, creating this beautiful texture. And the pattern is very easy to memorize, and once you're done with the cuff, all you do is knit stockinette for the rest of the sock. The yarn that I'm using is one that I have dyed myself using natural dyes. This yarn base is a beautiful blend of German merino wool and linen. It is called Merino Lino, and like I said, I dyed this one myself and I absolutely love the way how it came out. This is a non-superwash sock yarn that is completely free of any synthetics, and I still find that this base creates very sturdy socks. I have actually written a guide sharing my best tips and tricks how to create long-lasting socks when using all natural sock yarn, and if this is something that interests you, the guide is available completely for free. You can simply download it, and I'm going to put the link in the description box below for you. The letterpress sock pattern is just row after row of rhythm. No pressure to knit it by a certain time, no tricky parts, and just the joy of seeing something grow in my hands. And that's exactly what I love about mindless knitting projects in general. Sometimes there is just no need to be productive or perfect. It's just about enjoying the process. And with that being said, let's get going and have a look at the 10 mindless knitting projects that I have picked out to show you. Let's start with blanket patterns first, because I feel like a blanket is a very relaxing and meditative knit in general. And the first pattern that I would like to show you is called the Cozy Comfort Throw by Molly from Homespun House. She released this pattern in January of 2021 and knitted it with a fingering weight sock yarn that she held together with a silk mohair yarn to create a DK weight gauge. She used a US 8, and that corresponds to a 5mm needle for her blanket, but of course you can use any needle to fit the yarn weight that you are using for your pattern. And she held this strand of a silk mohair all throughout the blanket in order to create this fuzzy blended look, which I think looks very beautiful. But of course you could use any yarn and maybe even use some stash yarn to create a beautiful colorful blanket like the one that she created. But on the other hand, you could also simply choose one yarn in one color and knit a one color blanket. I think this would look very beautiful as well. And I also wanted to read the description to you that Molly put on the Ravelry project page. She says, "There is no better feeling than a warm and cozy blanket, the perfect throw to cuddle under while reading a good book, a coffee in hand and some warm snuggles with a loved one." And the second blanket that I have picked out to show you is called the Little Squares Knitted Blanket by Julie Harrison. This pattern came out in July of 2024, and she used a DK weight yarn to knit it and a US 6 or 4mm needle size. But again, the yarn weight and needle size is absolutely not critical here. You can choose whatever yarn and needle that you would like to use. This is another garter stitch blanket, and it is knitted flat, meaning that you are knitting all the time because you are simply knitting back and forth and create this garter look by it. And it is another blanket where you have those stripes that you later on sew together, and the stripes consist of these colorful squares and contrasting colored rectangles in between. And she states that you can make the blanket or the stripes as long as you like, and that it is also perfect for using up leftovers. And she also says that this is a very easy and enjoyable knit, while the stripe pattern is usually quite addictive. Let's move on to a different category now, and I would like to show you this wrap called the Half and Half Triangles wrap by Pearl Soho. This is a free pattern that came out in May of 2019 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 24 stitches and 48 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 3, which corresponds to 3.25 millimeters. The wrap actually comes in 2 different sizes, and I'm going to put up the finished measurements on the screen for you. Pearl Soho states that you will need 2 different colors and 2 100-gram skeins of each color for the smaller version and 3 skeins of each for the larger version. So I think this is a very beautiful pattern as well, and I imagine that it is very relaxing to knit because again you're knitting all the time back and forth to create these garter ridges. The next pattern that I would like to show you is the Saturday Shrug by Jackie Rose, and I have made this one myself. This is my version here. So it is basically just a long tube that is done by 1x1 ribbing, and I absolutely loved to knit this one. I remember that me and my whole family was very sick when I was knitting on this piece, and it just kept my brain from thinking about this sickness all the time, and it was very addictive with the striping, and I just loved to see the cowl grow. This is another free pattern that she released in January of 2023. It is knitted with a worsted weight yarn and a lace weight yarn held together to create a bulky weight yarn. And the gauge comes out to 18 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches with a needle size of a US 9, and that corresponds to 5.5 millimeters. Pattern comes in 1 size, with the finished measurements are 50 centimeters or 20 inches tall and 33 centimeters or 13 inches wide. And I also wanted to read the designer's description for you. She says, "Like bread fresh from the oven or a fire on a winter's evening, there are some things we never tire of, and this cowl is one of them. A simple, satisfying make you'll want to create again and again. Let the relaxing rib be a blank page to write your color story on today." Let's move on to the next category, and I would like to show you 2 sock patterns. Now, if you have never knitted a pair of socks before, socks might not be the most relaxing and mindless knitting project for you at that moment, but if you know how a sock is constructed and you have knitted a couple of pairs, personally I think if you have a sock with a very simple stitch pattern, it can be very relaxing and meditative to knit on a pair of socks. And the first pattern that I would like to show you is actually one that I have designed myself, called the Happiness All Around Socks. Unfortunately, I do not have the original sample to show you because I gifted them, but I'm going to put up a couple of pictures for you. So this is indeed a very simple pattern that is knitted from the calf down, and it contains an all-over ribbing to make sure that the socks are going to fit really well. I especially like knitting ribbed socks when I know that I am going to gift this pair, because ribbing is so stretchy and it adapts to a number of different sizes of feet and the legs. So the Happiness All Around Socks are knitted calf down with this all over ribbing. They feature a classic heel flap and gusset, and personally I really like to knit those. I released the pattern in October of 2023, and they are knitted with a fingering weight yarn, so the same yarn that I showed you that I am knitting the Letterpress Socks out of. It is my Merino Lino base, so the German Merino and linen blend. The gauge is 36 stitches and 46 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size I used is a US 0, which corresponds to a 2mm needle, and I pretty much do this with all of my socks that I use a US 0, because I really like to create a very tight fabric so that the socks are going to last as long as possible. And the pattern comes in 4 different sizes. And the second sock knitting pattern that I wanted to show you is one that I just finished, and this pattern is called I'm So Basic Socks by Summer Lee, and this is my version. So this is a very simple all over stockinette sock that is also great if you are not a very experienced sock knitter, because it comes with a very detailed description and I think even video tutorials. What I did here is that I used a yarn that I had purchased when we were on vacation in Lisbon in Portugal. So this is Retrosaria Rosa Pomar. The base is called Mondim, and I purchased this as an undyed cream colorway. I'm going to put the name up for you on the screen. And what I did then is that I naturally dyed the yarn myself using one of my natural yarn dyeing techniques that I'm calling the inverse speckling technique, and I absolutely love how these socks came out. They were very enjoyable to knit, and I love knitting socks with speckled sock yarn because every stitch is a surprise and you never really know how the socks are going to look in the end once you start knitting with the yarn. So definitely a pattern that I would recommend as well. She released it in August of 2020 and it is a free pattern. The gauge is 40 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size that she used is a US 1 and that corresponds to 2.25 millimeters. Comes in 4 different sizes, and like I said, it's knitted from the top down and features a heel flap and gusset construction. You can either do those contrasting heels, toes and cuffs that she did, or use one color all throughout the sock like I did for my version. If you are looking for a bigger project and don't mind the additional effort towards the beginning, I wanted to give you 2 sweater knitting pattern suggestions. Granted, you will have to pay a bit more attention at first once you cast on, and if this is a sweater that is knitted from the top down, you will have to pay attention to the shaping until you usually join in the round if you've reached the point of the underarms, and then you can just knit and knit and knit and knit. And personally, I really enjoy simple sweaters as mindless knitting projects from time to time. And the first pattern that I wanted to show you is called the Step by Step Sweater by Florence Miller. And this is another free pattern, which is just wonderful. It is also the perfect project if you are a beginner knitter, because there is a full video tutorial available here on YouTube, which I'm going to link for you in the description box, along with everything else that I'm mentioning in this video. This sweater is knitted with an Aran weight yarn and a gauge of 16 stitches and 20 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size that she used is a US 7 and a US 9, and that corresponds to 4.5 and 5.5 millimeter needles. It comes in 7 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 90 up to 150 centimeters or 35.5 up to 59 inches. So this is a raglan sweater construction knitted from the top down, and it also comes with 2 different neckline options. And the second sweater that I wanted to show you is one of my favorite knits of all time, and it is the sweater number 28 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I enjoyed the process of making this sweater so much that I am even considering knitting it a second time and gifting the second version to my mom. The sweater is very simple to knit. You start at the top and then knit your way down, and it consists of these all over garter ridges and ribbed sections that are alternating. So again, if you do not like to purl, this might not be the perfect mindless project for you, but to me it was the perfect mindless project. Pattern came out in December of 2023 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a lace weight yarn held together to create a DK weight gauge of 21 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters, and it comes in 8 different sizes, and the finished bust measurements range from 115 up to 157 centimeters or 24.5 up to 30.25 inches. Let's move on to the next category, and I wanted to show you a simple hat knitting pattern called the Musselburgh by Isolde Teague. Now this pattern is amazing. It comes in, I think, 9 different gauges for different yarn weights, from lace weight all the way up to DK, I think. And it covers the size range from newborn baby all the way up to adult. And you do not even have to make a gauge swatch for this pattern because your hat actually is the gauge swatch. So what you do is that you cast on and start increasing, and once you're at a point that is the perfect circumference for you, you just knit miles and miles of stockinette, and you basically knit a very long tube, because if you are done with double the size of how you would like your hat to be, you start decreasing, and in the end, once you are done, you fold the hat in on itself, so that you create this double layered fabric. And I think this is just a genius pattern, and I would love to knit this hat this year. I even already have the pattern in my library. I just need to make time to cast it on. And one more pattern that I would like to show you is called the Copycat Dishcloth by Michelle Krause. She released this one in May of 2010, and it is also a free pattern, and I love the statement that she put on the Ravelry page. She says, "These are underrated. You get the pleasure of finishing something quickly, and they're practical too." And I completely agree. If you're looking for a smaller, mindless project, a dishcloth is the perfect option for you. And the gauge is also not critical at all. You simply use whatever yarn you have on hand and just start knitting. So she knitted her version with a worsted weight yarn with a gauge of 16 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And she used a US 8 that corresponds to a 5 millimeter needle. She says, "This cotton dishcloth is quick and easy to knit. It is simple, symmetrical, and the 2 stockinette bands at each end mimic a traditional dishcloth, hence the name Copycat Dishcloth." Sometimes we just need a break from problem solving, from constantly learning something new, from challenging ourselves, and that's totally fine. To me, mindless knitting projects remind me of why I picked up knitting in the first place, because of the way it makes me feel and the relaxation and the meditative practice that comes with it. So if you're currently feeling tired or burned out or just not in the mood for something complicated, just give yourself permission to knit something small and something easy. I would love to know, what are your favorite mindless knitting projects? Do you have some that you go back to over and over again? Please share in the comments. I would love to feature your favorite pattern in a future video. Thank you for spending this cozy moment with me today. I hope you are feeling relaxed and inspired by now, and I'll see you next time. Happy knitting! Bye guys!